Right in the butt. Directly into his butt. What's going on, everybody? My name is Calypso, representing the Remnants of Hope gaming community from right here within our Elder Scrolls Online division of the guild. I'm the PvE officer of that division, and I'm coming to you today with a Dragonknight tanking video. I'm going to be explaining the ins and outs of DK tanking, how things work, why they work, and hopefully by the end of this video you will have a better understanding of what it means to be a Dragonknight tank. Now, the first question that a prospective tank should ask themselves whenever they first contemplate picking up the role is, what kind of tank do you want to be? Do you want to be a casual tank, or do you want to be a hardcore tank? So what are the differences? A casual tank is someone who is just looking to make themselves available to fill the role in a normal combat scenario. Nothing difficult, a normal dungeon, a normal trial, something very, very low stakes. This person is going to go out and pick themselves up a couple of pieces of tanking gear, Ebon Armory for the health boost out of Crypt of Hearts, for example, and then maybe a set of crafted gear to pair alongside that, Toruk's Pact being an extremely popular one out of the zone Deshawn. And then after that, you just pick up a monster helm of some sort, Bloodspawn being the most popular one out of Veteran Spindle Clutch 2, and then they're good to go after that. They're here and there, made available to tank and fill the role when needed, and that's about it. That is a casual tank. Now, a hardcore tank, what separates them? Well, it's exactly what it sounds like on the tin.
Mind of its own.
Bring your axes. Got him. My horn. A hardcore tank is somebody who knows the ins and outs of every single fight, every single encounter. They understand the composition of their raid, the composition of their group, and how that feeds into what they're going to be doing as a tank, what healers are going to be doing, what DPS are going to be doing at any given time. This is why tanks usually are the shot callers in any given group, because it's very important as the person who is holding the boss in check, as well as any other dangerous adds. They need to know what's going on around them, and a hardcore tank, this individual, is someone who takes the time to study that. So it is an investment. It takes time. Your job as a new tank, as you're learning the ropes, is literally to die, and that's okay. That's how you learn, and that is what a hardcore tank does. That's the differences between the two, and as I said, this video is going to assume that you want to be a hardcore tank, because why else would you be here, you know? A casual tank doesn't need to know absolutely everything, right? Right. So, let's get right into it. So, you've decided that you want to be a Dragonknight tank. Now, why are Dragonknight tanks often touted as the best tanks, quote unquote? Well, the reason for this is because they're the most adaptable. They can excel and thrive in any given situation after making very minimal changes to their loadouts. They don't have to stretch too far one way or the other to make something work in any given fight. And they bend really easily to the needs of the group or the combat situation at hand. Their kit is incredibly strong. Their class skills and abilities lend themselves very, very well to tanking in general. They're the all-purpose tank. They're very adaptable, as I said. It's probably the best word to describe them. I thought about this the other day. Adaptable. You know, you don't have to stretch things too far in order to meet the needs of any given situation. That's why DKs are extremely popular, and they're easy to use. They're very easy to understand, more so than the other popular tanking classes, such as Necromancer or Nightblades. Necromancers and Nightblades have a much higher skill ceiling in terms of tanking than DKs do. So DKs are always a great recommendation for the new tank. So you've decided to be a DK. The next question that gets asked a lot is, what race is best? Now, here's the thing about this game. It's actually a beautiful thing about this game. Your race choice ultimately does not matter. As you can see here on the screen, I'm a Khajiit. I'm a kitty person. Let me take off my helm here so you can just gaze at my splendor. Hello. Hi. Yeah, I'm a cat. Khajiit passives lend nothing to tanking. Absolutely nothing. To give you an idea here, if we look at my racials, increases XP gain with the medium armor skill line. Cool. I'm wearing heavy armor. That's great. Robustness, health recovery goes up by 100, and stamina and magicka recovery go up by 85. Cool, sweet. Lunar Blessings, max health, magic, and stamina goes up by 825. That's arguably the most useful out of the four passives if you decide to go Khajiit in terms of tanking. And then finally, Feline Ambush, crit damage and crit healing goes up by 10%. Decreases your detection radius. So that's neat. So by and large, Khajiit passives have absolutely nothing to do with tanking, but whenever things get serious and we're pushing harder content, veteran content, hard modes, this is the boy that I bring out. And obviously I wouldn't do that if if race played such a large role. So you can be any race that you absolutely want to be. Whoever fits you best. I want to stress that. I'm a Khajiit. They nothing to do with tanking here. Let's say you do want to optimize yourself a little bit. Well, you have a handful of choices in terms of what's popular with regards to tanking. We can go over them real quick. First off, we have the Red Guard. Now, Red Guards have some really good passives in terms of tanking. Wayfarer, your experience gain with one-hand and shield abilities goes up by 15%. Increases the duration of any eaten food by 15 minutes. This is fantastic for tanking. We like that a lot. Martial training reduces the cost of your weapon abilities by 8%. As a tank, we do tend to use a lot of weapon abilities. Reduces the effectiveness of snares applied to you by 15%. This is great. Conditioning, max stamina goes up by 2k, great. And Adrenaline Rush, when you deal direct damage, which is any light attack or anything like that, you restore 950 stamina, and that effect can occur every 5 seconds. My Templar tank is a Red Guard, and I never run out of stamina, ever. They are fantastic for that. So that is a good choice. Another popular one after that is Argonian. Argonian's Amphibian XP gain with Resto Staff skill line goes up by 15%. You might think that's nothing to do with tanking, but there are some builds that use a Resto Staff on the back bar. Healing done by 6%. That's great for your own self-healing in terms of skills like Green Dragon Blood, which I'll get into in a little bit. Resistances goes up. Health goes up by 1,000. Disease resistance by 2310. Disease resistance, by the way, is physical resistance, or physical damage, I should say. Disease damage is a type of physical damage. So this helps with that. And you gain immunity to that status effect. And max magic goes up by 1,000. When you drink a potion, you restore 4k health, magicka, and stamina. This is the big one right here. This is why a lot of people love choosing Argonians as their tank, because resources are hardly ever a problem. You can go into a trial with trash potions, just whatever you're picking up off the street, drink them, and restore all of these resources. You don't get the buffs from crafted potions, obviously, but, you know, in a pinch, they'll do. So that's great. Argonians are a popular choice. After that, there is the Imperial. Imperials you have to pay a little bit extra for if you don't have that particular upgrade. Increased experience gain with one-handed shield abilities, very much like the Red Guard. Very nice. Increases your gold gained by 1%. Cool. Tough. Increases your maximum health by 2k, stamina goes up by 2k, and reduces the cost of all your abilities by 3%. That's extremely good for sustain. When you deal direct damage, you'll heal yourself for 333 and restore 333 magicka and stamina. This effect can occur once every 5 seconds. Imperials are really good in terms of their resources. Resource sustain, excuse me. I would argue almost that this is better than the Argonian potions passive. But that's a matter of opinion there, personal opinion. Now, finally, this is the class that I, in particular, really like for DKs, and that is the Nord. So, Reveler doesn't really matter too much. Experience gain with two-handed skill line, whatever. Resist Frost, max health goes up by 1,000. Cold resistance by 2310. Gain immunity to the chilled status effect, so that's helpful in boss fights or other trash mobs that are using cold at you. Particular in fights like Sunspire, if you're main tanking Locustes, the Frost Breath is going to hurt you a little bit less here. Max stamina goes up by 1,500. When you take damage, and this is the main reason why somebody would take a Nord right here, you gain 5 ultimate, and this effect can occur every 10 seconds. And then physical and spell resistance goes up, so that's nice. Very nice for tanking there. But this is the big one right here, the second from the last one, Stalwart. Nords have amazing ultimate regeneration because of this, and as a DK, you restore resources whenever you use an ultimate, courtesy of this little passive right down here. I believe it's Earthen Heart. Yes, Battle Roar. When you cast an ultimate ability, you restore 52 health, 46 magicka, and 46 stamina for each point of the ultimate's cost. Now, as you can see, I have an ultimate prepped up here. So, why don't we take our magicka reserves down a bit, shall we? Let me just cast this over and over again. Shut up, Dusk. We'll do that. Cast an ultimate here. Boom. A little over half of that just restored. Very, very nice. Very, very nice. So that feeds in quite well with the DK. As a DK, our resource sustain is impacted directly by how often we use ultimates, and we want to use ultimates a lot, such as Warhorn or One-Hand Shield ultimates, which I'll get into a little bit later. But I think the Nord feeds best into a Dragonknight, particularly if you don't have the Imperial unlocked, because of that passive, Stalwart. Hardly ever going to run out of resources because of something like that. You restore a ton for using ultimates. It's fantastic. So, you've chosen a race. Now, you're staring at your class and you're wondering, okay, what's important and what is not important? Well, we're going to run right on down the line here. First off, in our Ardent Flame tree, right off the bat, I'm going to say that Ardent Flame is primarily geared around your Magicka or Stamina DPS for the most part. As a tank, you're not going to be using the ultimate here, Dragonknight Standard, unless you're good on Warhorns, you're good on Shields, and you're just looking to help increase the DPS of your group. You can throw that down, but 9 times out of 10, a DK tank is not going to use this ultimate here. Molten Whip, Lava Whip, that's all Magicka DPS. Same with Searing Strike, morphing it into either Venomous Claw or Burning Embers. That's all for the respective DPS rotations. Now, Engulfing Flames, the morph of Fiery Breath, increases the amount of flame damage that flame damage attacks do from your group. Very rarely is a DK tank going to take this skill. Part of the reason for that is because the percentage value that the flame damage goes up is entirely based off of your offensive stats. So what is considered your offensive stats? It doesn't directly say, but is a combination of your maximum magicka and your spell damage, both of which typically are not going to be that high as a tank. As you can see, I personally only hit 2%. So you really got to bend over backwards to make that work, and making that work means taking it to the maximum of 10%. You got to sacrifice a lot of defensive traits on your gear and replace them with spell damage traits and whatnot to make this work. Very rarely are you going to take that to facilitate your group. Nowadays, most groups are going to have, most Magicka compositions, I should say, are going to have a Mag DK in there somewhere for Engulfing Flames, supplying that extra flame damage. So, by and large, you're not going to have to worry about it, but it is there to consider if you so need it. Skipping the next one for the moment, we'll go right down here to Inferno. Cauterize and Flames of Oblivion are, again, specifically for their Magicka and Stamina DPS variants. Now, the big one here that we're going to be always using as a DK is Fiery Grip, and we want to morph that to Unrelenting Grip. The reason for that is because Empowering Chains pulls us to the enemy instead of pulling them to us, and we don't want that. We don't want to go where they go. We want them to come to us, and we can stack them properly so the group can nuke them. So we will take Unrelenting Grip. Side effect of these chains is that we are granted Major Expedition for 4 seconds, which is nice if you need to quickly maneuver around people. One example I like to give for that is if you are main tanking Saint Olms, final boss of Asylum Sanctorium. If you need to get out of his Frontal Cone Steam Breath very, very quickly, you can throw out an Unrelenting Grip and get that Major Expedition. Because if the target cannot be pulled, which is bosses and elite enemies, you restore 100% of the ability's cost as Magicka. So you throw that out on a boss, and that is free Major Expedition for 4 seconds. So it's handy. You can throw that out there and move out of the way in a pinch. Moving into the passive abilities, again, most of these have to deal with DPS in some respect, but the big one here is Combustion. When you apply Burning to an enemy, you restore 500 Magicka. When you apply Poison to an enemy, you restore 500 Stamina. This is fantastic for our resource regeneration, and it is extremely useful for Magicka and Stamina DKs, because they're burning and poison people, so that's very nice, but we'll get into this a little bit later here. After that, we have Warmth, dealing damage with an Ardent Flame ability. We don't have to worry about that too much. Same with Searing Heat, and same with World in Ruin. These three are just kind of, if you have a spare point laying around, you can throw them in here, but Combustion is the big one out of these 4 that you really want to invest into and make sure that you have that. Even if you're not building around it, just naturally, you'll get benefits from it in terms of your resource sustain. Moving on to Draconic Power here, we have the ultimate Ferocious Leap. This is primarily used in PvP, actually, as an opener. You jump into a group of boys and girls there and just disorient them, shield yourself, and do all kinds of fun stuff. But as a tank, we're not really going to take it. It does provide a shield, I know that, but when you jump into a group, you are spreading the group all over the place, which is the exact opposite of what you want to do as a tank. So save that for PvP. It's extremely fun for PvP. After that, we have spiked armor. Now, the morph that you take here is really up to you. Hardened armor is typically the one that I would recommend, since volatile armor is the damage morph, and obviously as a tank, you're not there to do damage. This is our in-class ability, and I say in-class because there are other skills outside of our class with which we might want our physical and spell resistance to come from. But when you cast this, you gain Major Resolve. So physical and spell resistance goes up by 5280 for 20 seconds, and you gain a damage shield that absorbs up to about 7k damage for 6 seconds. It is that high for me because, as it says, it scales off of your max health, and if we look at my character sheet, I got everything into health here. Now, in some situations, you might hear that that's a bad idea, but for this particular build, it works, and I will get into that a little bit later. So that is spiked armor. Typically, you want to morph it to hardened armor. While active, the armor returns 547 magic damage to any enemy that uses direct damage. That's cool, whatever. After that, we have Dark Talons. Normally, we would just morph that to Choking Talons, obviously because Burning Talons is the damage effect, the damage morph, so we don't care about that. We're not there to do damage. You deal 2350 magic damage to enemies near you, and you immobilize them for 4 seconds. Enemies hit are afflicted with minor maim, which is great, reducing their damage done by 15% for 10 seconds. Now, obviously, as I said before, bosses and elite mobs are immune to CC. You can't pull them towards you, you can't root them, but you can still cast Choking Talons on them, and they will still be afflicted with minor maim. A root is not a prerequisite of the minor maim, so you can still get away with it that way. Also, you're supplying a synergy for your teammates. An ally near the Talons can activate the Ignite synergy, dealing about 4,000 magic damage to all enemies held within them. So, a really good opener into any combat situation is to use Unrelenting Grip to leash them in, and then keep them there with Choking Talons. So, I'm going to demonstrate right here. Boom. Boom. Mobilized, yada yada yada, so on and so forth. And great, and I will skip ahead here to where I've killed them, because this is going to take a minute. Moving on, after that, we have Dragon Blood. We are going to want to morph that to Green Dragon Blood, and the reason for that is because Coagulating Blood, the heal from that is based off of your max Magicka and spell damage, which is why Magicka DKs take Coagulating Blood, because obviously they are up in their spell damage. But for our purposes, we will take Green Dragon Blood. Draw on your Draconic Blood to heal for 37% of your missing health, and you'll also gain Major, Fortitude, Endurance, and Vitality. Or Minor Vitality, excuse me. Increasing your health recovery and stamina recovery by 20%, and healing received by 8% for 23 seconds. Green Dragon Blood in every combat situation should always be up. Shut up, Dusk. Should always be up on cooldown. Be sure to remember to cast this. You always want to keep it up. The Major Endurance is very nice for our stamina regeneration. Major Fortitude is fantastic, and Minor Vitality is fantastic. Our healers are keeping us up. We like it, we like it, we like it a lot. So definitely always have Green Dragon Blood up off of cooldown. Now, these next two here, if you have a flexible area on your skill bar, you might fill it with one of these two. The first of which is Protective Scale. Flex your scales, reducing damage taken from projectiles by 50% for 6 seconds, and you gain immunity to snares and immobilizations for 2 seconds. That is Protective Plate. The other option is Dragonfire Scale. This is the damage morph. Incoming projectiles cause you to deal flame damage back to the attacker. As a tank, we just want Protective Plate. So if you use that thing, there are very, very few situations where I personally have needed Protective Plate. The most noticeable of them was when I was tanking the first boss of Halls of Fabrication, the Hunter Killers on Veteran. They send out quite a few projectiles, ground traveling projectiles that stun you when you hit them. So regular applications of Protective Plate, because you look really cool when you do it, kept me immune from those immobilizations without a reduction in my movement speed, such as other abilities might do. So that was very nice. It's only 2 seconds, but it does help a lot, and it's also relatively cheap. So handy little skill there to have, and like I said, you look really cool when you use it. After that, we have Inhale. Typically, we morph that to Deep Breath. The other morph, Draw Essence. The second hit of the breath refunds magicka for each enemy struck. We don't necessarily need that as a DK tank because we have plenty of ways of restoring our magicka resources, which I will get into a little bit later. So we will just morph it to Deep Breath. Channel Draconic Energy to suck in the air around you, dealing 1200 magic damage to nearby enemies and healing you for 114% of the damage cost. That's a nice little effect off of that, but we don't take it for the heal, we take it for the interrupt. Any enemy hit that is casting is interrupted, set off balance, and stunned for 2 seconds. Off balance is a very, very handy mechanic to be hyper aware of during any given fight. The quick version of what it is that when an enemy is off balance, heavy attacks will restore double the amount of resources from that enemy. If this is just a regular miscellaneous mob, one heavy attack from one person will remove off balance, but if it's on a boss or an elite enemy, off balance will last its full duration, which I believe is about 7 seconds, with a 14-second cooldown, if I'm not mistaken. I believe I have that correctly. So, if you're paying attention in the middle of a fight and you're a little bit low on resources and you see that the enemy is off balance, you can heavy attack and get some resources. Very handy. And after 2.5 seconds, you Excel Fire, dealing 2,500 flame damage to nearby enemies. The fire expulsion there is a prerequisite of interruption, so you need to get an interrupt off in order to Excel Fire. Otherwise, nothing happens. But the AoE interrupt is really the primary reason why you might want to slot this skill, depending on the situation. You inhale, and I will not Excel Fire because there's no enemies around me. How about this camel? Yeah, there we go. Cool, huh? Doesn't that look neat? Sorry, dude. I'm sorry. So anyway, a handful of situations where I really like Deep Breath is Hellraw Citadel. There is an elite enemy called Flame Shapers there. And all of them cast a raid-wide ability, consistent fire damage that needs to be interrupted. So if you're in the middle of things and you're surrounded by Flame Shapers and whatnot who are getting ready to pop this ability off, you can just cast this and get all of them all at once and expel some flame damage as well. Another place I really like Deep Breath is Veteran Dragonstar Arena. There are numerous occasions as you ascend throughout the various stages of Dragonstar Arena where you need to leash enemies in and keep them interrupted, keep them from casting various abilities. So regular applications of Deep Breath helps immensely with that. I think between the two of them, Deep Breath is probably going to be the more useful of the two. Like I said, I don't often take Protective Scale, but there are more than one situation, more than one instances, where I would take Deep Breath here. Moving into the passive abilities, you're going to want to take all of these. Literally all of these. Draconic Power, out of the 3 class skill trees here, is the primary tanking one. Iron Skin increases the amount of damage you block by 10%. Take it. Take everything. Burning Heart. While a Draconic Power ability is active, your healing received is increased by 12%. This is on top of the extra healing we receive from Green Dragon Blood, 8%, from the Minor Vitality. So those two stack on top of each other. So if you have Green Dragon Blood up, Iron Skin is helping you out, or excuse me, Burning Heart is helping you out. That is almost 20% extra healing. So you want to make sure, as I said, to keep Green Dragon Blood up all the time to benefit from something like that. Very nice. After that, we have Elder Dragon. Increases your health recovery by 5% for each Draconic Power ability slotted. Usually that's going to be about 2 of them on 1 bar, so you can see my bonus here is 10%. Increases the range of your melee attacks by 2 meters. This effect only applies to instant cast attacks with a 5-meter range. So, which one does that apply to specifically? Well, our primary taunt here. Moving into the one hand and shield ability here, our primary taunt there is Puncture. We would morph that either to Pierce Armor or Ransack, and I'll get into that a little bit later. But this increases the range of those. So as you can see, I am standing... well, hold on. You know what? I don't want to take time to kill those guys. Let's go find another camel. Yeah, there we go. What's up, dude? Hey. So, as you can see from back here, I cannot hit him with Pierce Armor. Obviously, he is way far out of range. Did I really? Anyway, as I was saying before I was so rudely interrupted, obviously, at this range, I cannot taunt him, right? But if I move up just a little bit, right about here, actually. Hold on. He's moving around. Right here. See that? Look how far away I was from him. That's incredible. That's fantastic. You might think that's not a big deal, but when you're running and gunning towards a boss and you're trying to cover ground and whatnot, it's really nice to be able to have that extended range on your taunt. DK is the only class that has that. Another reason why they're so good at being the tank. And then after that, we have Scaled Armor, increases our spell resistance by 3,300. Take it. Take all of these, like I said. Finally, moving into the Earth and Heart skill tree, we have our ultimate here, Magma Armor. And we would morph that typically to Magma Shell, once again, because Corrosive Armor is the damage morph of the two. Now, Magma Shell is the closest thing that there is to a God mode in this game. Ignite the molten lava in your veins, limiting incoming damage to 3% of your max health and dealing 600-some flame damage to nearby enemies each second for 12 seconds. When activated, nearby allies gain a damage shield for 100% of their max health for 10 seconds, which is huge. So obviously any DPS hanging around you that has 18,000 health, they're going to get a damage shield for 18,000. Very nice. This is a great ultimate for when you're learning fights. This is your oh crap button right here, Magma Shell. Let me just slot that real quick. I don't think I have enough ultimate for it. Oh, I do. Looks like this. Very, very cool right there. I cannot take any more than 3% of my health in damage. Now, this does not apply for absolutely everything. There are some mechanic-driven attacks that are not affected by things like Magma Shell. There are some attacks that will one-shot you regardless of whether or not you have Magma Shell active. Over time, you will learn what these effects are. There aren't too many of them, but there are some mechanically driven attacks and whatnot that do not care about what kind of shields you have. So there's that. But otherwise, it is a fantastic oh crap button. This is also a very useful ultimate to throw out there whenever you need to revive allies. If you can only take 3% of your max health as damage, then that's plenty of time for you to just ignore whatever's coming your way and revive people who are down. It's very, very handy for that. But unlike my preferred ultimate, which is the One Hand and Shield ultimate here, which is way cheaper, by the way, which is an automatic block for 8 seconds, Magma Shell will not protect you from attacks that would knock you back, which would otherwise interrupt a revive. So, something to consider there. But otherwise, it's a fantastic ultimate. I used it a lot when I was first starting out tanking on my DK. I loved it. It was great. In terms of the shield that your allies gained, they got to be right up your butt in order to benefit from that shield. Specifically, 5 meters around your person. They got to be real close to you to benefit from that shield. So the primary reason that you would use it is not for the shield on your allies, but to make sure that you are not about to be killed. After that, we have Stone Fist. Normally, Stamina DPS are going to take that and morph it to Stone Giant, specifically for, Stagger. Each hit applies Stagger, increasing damage taken by 50 per stack for 6 seconds. Stagger doesn't sound like a lot. You add 50 to whatever amount of damage that you're doing. In a group scenario, this adds up quite a bit. And they recently redid this with the latest patch, so it looks a lot cooler. You cast it once, and you get these lovely 3 things floating around you. And then after that, subsequent casts will throw them at your enemy. Let's find another camel. Come here, you. Come here. Come here, hi. Hey. What's up? All right, throw that out, and we're going to throw it. Anyway, so that's what that looks like. Again, Stamina DPS, if anybody are going to take this. Very rarely is the tank going to use Stone Giant as a form of increasing their group's DPS. But sometimes they might. Very much like Engulfing Flames, a tank will have to bend over a little bit backwards in order to make this viable in terms of the damage increase, but it is an option. Molten Weapons we're not going to take. We're not going to worry about that. As I mentioned, most compositions are going to have a Magicka DK or a Stamina DK using Molten or Igneous weapons, and they both produce very similar effects for your group, so we don't have to worry about that. The one we do want, though, is Obsidian Shield. The version that we want here is Igneous Shield, specifically because you get a higher damage shield out of it than you would from Fragmented Shield. Fragmented Shield just increases the duration of Major Mending, which we do not need whatsoever. So we want to morph it to Igneous Shield. You get a damage shield for yourself and nearby allies that absorbs about 4k damage. Your own damage shield absorbs almost 10,000 damage. Again, in my case, this is scaling off of my max health. You also gain Major Mending, increasing your healing done by 25% for 3 seconds. That also considers the healing that you're doing to yourself, such as Green Dragon Blood. And this gets into one of my favorite combos on a DK tank. This is the Power Healing Wombo combo, as I like to call it. First, you cast Igneous Shield. 4 seconds of Major Mending, and then you go right into Green Dragon Blood. The heal from Green Dragon Blood is benefited by the Major Mending. So, what you could do is you could take your health all the way down, which I'm going to do right now. We're going to venture off into the Mages Guild here. Final skill here is Equilibrium. A DK tank would typically take Balance. I'm going to diverge a little bit here. The reason for that, this is how we restore Magicka. Normally a DK tank is going to take Balance to restore their Magicka. You sack about 5,000 health for 3,000 Magicka. 5,000 health sounds like a lot, but it's honestly small beans compared to the amount of healing that we're outputting on ourselves and from our healers and from the group. Not a big deal. But for the purposes of this Power Healing Wombo combo, I'm going to take my health all the way down here, about as much as I can. There we go. Igneous Shield, Major Mending, and Green Dragon Blood. Look at that. Right back up to half. Another cast of Green Dragon Blood, and we're good to go.
This is incredible!
Not so incredible as what happened next.
It is extremely powerful. It is an extremely powerful combination of skills to really take you back up to full. So you just took damage from a huge, huge hit. What are you going to do about it? Igneous, Green Dragon Blood, we're good. We're good to go. Let me just demonstrate that one more time. I'm going to drink a potion is what I'm going to do. Come on. Come on. There we go. Igneous, Green Dragon Blood, Igneous, Green Dragon Blood. We're right as rain. Look at that. It's so nice. I love that combo. That is our primary heal combo right there. Igneous Shield into Dragon Blood. It's fantastic. And then we get our damage shield too. We get a damage shield out of all that. Look at that. 8k damage shield right there. It is not uncommon to see a Dragonknight tank be third in place in terms of group healing. You'll see your number 1 healer, your number 2 healer, and then your DK tank, because this counts as a heal when you're shielding people. And you're going to be doing that a lot. The next two here are flex skills. If you have a flex spot open, you need one of these two. The first of which is Petrify. This is primarily, honestly, for PvP. You encase an enemy in stone, stunning them for 3 seconds. When the stun ends, they take magic damage. And then the various morphs of that. As a DK tank, we're not really going to take that. After that, we have Ash Cloud. A DK tank normally is just going to, if they're going to use one of the two, it's going to be Cinderstorm. This is a reduction in enemy movement speed by 70%, and it heals you and your allies for 763 every 1 second. If we have Major Mending on at the time, though, that goes up to 931. So, Cinderstorm can be quite good, and it looks cool. Everybody within here is getting dots, heal dots, heals over time. We like it a lot. I like it in certain fights whenever there's adds that are fast moving and we need to slow them down a little bit. Obviously, you can use skills such as Caltrops in order to produce the same effect, but Caltrops doesn't have a heal, does it? No. It does have Major Fracture, though, which is kind of cool. But as a DK, Cinderstorm is cool. There are some boss fights where I like to use this to slow down adds as they come in, specifically on dungeons such as Moonhunter Keep. I believe it is the third boss, which is that giant werewolf that summons that mob of puppies that can't be taunted. If you want to slow them down, you can just throw this out. Their movement speed is slowed down by 70%. People can backpedal and nuke them down. Really helps for situations like that where you need to maybe put some space between you and some adds that are just a little too hungry for your face. And now, passives. Eternal Mountain increases the duration of your Earth and Heart abilities by 20%. We do want that because that increases the duration of things like Igneous Shield and Magma Shell. But Igneous Shield is the big one here that benefits particularly from Eternal Mountain. After that, we have Battle Roar, which I discussed earlier. When you cast an ultimate ability, you restore 52 health, 46 magicka, and stamina for each point of the ultimate cost. This is fantastic for our resource regen, Definitely take both points into that. Mountain's Blessing, when you cast an Earth and Heart ability, this is a really cool one here. You and your group gain Minor Brutality for 20 seconds, increasing your weapon damage by 10%. This is why, specifically, in a stamina composition group, you will see the DK, because they like their weapon damage. If you are in combat, you also generate 3 ultimate. Great. And this effect can occur once every 6 seconds. So that's a fun one. You like that. Definitely take both points into Mountain's Blessing. And then after that, this is a very unique one in terms of our stamina regen. When you cast a non-stamina costing Earthen Heart ability, you restore 990 stamina. So, check this out. Let me use my stamina here real quick. Use some of that. Use some of that. I can't dodge anymore. There we go. All right, cool. So, let me just cast Igneous Shield a few times. See our stamina going up? Really helpful for our stamina regen. Like that a lot. Igneous Shield is going to be your primary form of restoring stamina outside of heavy attacking and other forms of regeneration there. It's just going to be Igneous Shield. That's how we keep our stamina up. We like it. And those are the classes and their passives. That's primarily what you want to focus on in terms of the class skills and passives. Those are the ones that you want to focus on. Now, what other skills as a tank do you want to focus on? Because obviously, it's not just made up of your class abilities. Well, if we go into one-handed shield, obviously you want that sword and board. Shield Discipline is the morph that I personally like over Magma Shell. Obviously, this has come as a result of experience. I'm a little less reliant on the God mode that Magma Shell provides, so I enjoy Shield Wall. Specifically, the morph Shield Discipline allows you to automatically block all attacks at no cost for 8 seconds, and your one-handed shield abilities cost nothing while this effect persists. So you throw this thing out. This is your chance to reapply taunts. This is your chance to throw out defensive abilities such as Absorb Missile, which we'll get into in a minute. Things of that nature. But I like it primarily for a few reasons. Number one, the cost is only 135. Compare that to Magma Shell, which is a whopping 200 ultimate. This ultimate right here, Shield Wall, Shield Discipline, takes way less time to recharge. Way less time. And when you use it, those are resources that you are getting back whenever you use it. Courtesy of Battle War. Courtesy of Mount Battle War. So I like it for that. It's also a lot more useful, in my opinion, for reviving dead allies because it's an automatic block for 8 seconds, which means you're not going to get knocked around. Magma Shell may reduce damage to 3% of your max health, but it's not going to keep you from getting knocked off your feet. Very important to remember. So I prefer this ultimate on a regular basis. Shield Wall, Shield Discipline. Spell Wall will also reflect projectiles back at you. That's the difference there. But I personally prefer my one-handed shield abilities costing nothing while this effect persists, particularly because I can spam things like defensive posture. Whichever morph of these two, whichever morph that you take here ultimately does not matter too much. It's really up to you depending on the situation at hand. Personally, I like defensive stance, even though I've got Absorb Missile right now. Personally, I like this defensive stance. You get a very, very nice defensive shield there. You get about 11k shield for 6 seconds. You reflect the next harmful direct damage projectile cast at you. And while you have a shield equipped, the amount of damage you can block is increased by 10%, and the cost of blocking is reduced by 10%. I really like defensive stance. Absorb Missile, the difference here is that while the shield persists, you are healed for about 7k the next time a harmful direct damage projectile hits you. Personally, I don't think I need that quite so much, again, for reasons such as the power healing wombo combo right here. So we don't necessarily need Absorb Missile to heal us, but once we activate our ultimate shield wall, the one-hand shield ultimate, we can repeatedly cast defensive stance and get that max 11k shield at no cost whatsoever. We like that a lot. Very rarely do you ever actually need to spam the skill, but it's nice that it's free. You know, it's cool. So, after that, we have Puncture, which is our primary melee taunt. Whichever one of these that you morph is also up to you. Now, in a normal, organized raid compositions, a lot of tanks are tanking Ransack for the minor protection. You inflict the enemy with Major Fracture, so your physical resistance goes up, and you gain Minor Protection, reduces your damage taken by 8% for 15 seconds. Now, the other morph here, which is Pierce Armor, applies both Major Fracture and Major Breach. So their physical and spell resistance goes down by 5280 for 15 seconds. But the expectation is that a healer in your group or a random DPS is going to have... Where is it? Oh, it's a Destro, that's right. Elemental Drain, which applies the Major Breach side of things. So, a lot of DKs are just saying, F it, and they are morphing it to Ransack for the minor protection, because a dead tank cannot tank. After that, we have low slash. Typically, that would get morphed to heroic slash. The reason for that is because you gain minor heroism, increasing your ultimate generation. We like it for that. You can also take deep slash, so you can take everybody, hit everybody in a cone in front of you and snare them, which is handy. So it's really dependent on the situation there, but 9 times out of 10, it's going to be heroic slash. Now, the reason I don't have that on my bar, on either of my bars, is because I like using Choking Talons. Remember, Choking Talons also afflicts people with minor maim, just like heroic slash does, but Choking Talons does provide a synergy, and depending on the enemy, it will provide that root. So I like that a lot. So in my case, I prefer Choking Talons, and I don't necessarily need the ultimate regeneration as much. If you want it, you can absolutely take low slash or heroic slash. We talked about defensive posture. These next two are your flex ones here. Shield charge here. If you're just trying to close the gap between you and a boss, shield charge is great for that. Otherwise, primarily, you're going to use that for PvP. There are very, very few situations where I felt that I've needed a charge ability of some sort, but it does look cool. Right in the butt. Directly into his butt. And after that, you have Power Bash. Strike an enemy full force with your shield, dealing physical damage. No tank ever takes Power Bash. I don't even know what the morph of Power Bash is, so that gives you an idea. In terms of passives, you are going to take all of these. Reduction in costs. Weapon damage goes up. Standard bash attacks. Deflect bolts. Battlefield mobility. You move faster while you're blocking. Things of that nature. Take all of those passives. So that's the one hand and shield skill line. There is a bunch more that I can go into if I so choose in terms of the various flexible skills that you can slot into at any given point. The current build that I'm using, that's another video in and of itself. But those are just the basics in terms of DK tanking and the skills that you should be looking out for, how they can be used, how everything functions together. Hopefully that answers most questions, at least from the start. I will be doing multiple videos touching on the various aspects of DK tanking, but these are the basics. These are the skills and passives that you really want to focus your time on whenever you first pick up the class and first start tanking. But like I said, I don't want this to run too long. So, hope you enjoyed the video. Leave a comment down below in the thread if you have any further questions. I will endeavor to to answer them. And be on the lookout for future videos of this nature. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.